our social media pages on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter at Western Spring Television, and on YouTube at Western Spring Television. And you can watch us on the Star Times, the DTT platform, channel 190. Thank you very much for joining us again this morning.
Well, so let's take a break about, talk about it was a momentous time here in Osun State for the people of Osun State yesterday.
The much anticipated judgment.
Yes, yes. I do hope that, the time really of this governor, now that the coast is clear, he can sit down, settle down to work and bring dividends of democracy, as you like to say here, to Nigerians. I don't know. I mean, I'm not always comfortable with that term, dividends of democracy. Why don't you talk about shares of democracy? If you're talking, I don't know when we bought the shares. I'll get the dividends.
I think he can really work with a clear mind now without distractions and to map out strategies to put in place all of the agenda that he spoke about during his inauguration. Well, it's a time for the Osun people to jubilate still and then to look forward to what this administration has to offer them.
All right. So we expect and we wish him the very best. And for the other side also, we hope that this time
take it in good faith
to realign, to reassess, and then to prepare next for the next day. Because as much as you need government, you also need opposition, and a strong and a viral one, to put the government on its toes to ensure that things are done. Things are done as they should. But that's the situation here in Osun State, and that's our main focus. But that'll be when we bring you the newspapers. But after the newspapers, rather, we will have our guest, who is a former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice here in Osun State, to be joining us shortly to help us look at how the processes went at the Supreme Court, and indeed look back from the beginning of the tribunal. Yes, all right. But that will be after this break. I'll be back. All right, so let's begin the papers now, and let's start with the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper has at its banner headline, Presidential Poll, Tribunal to consider PDP LP's live broadcast request. With the rider broadcasting proceedings live is of national importance, Atiku's legal team, LP, insists. Justice Samani promises speedy treatment of demand. APC vows appropriate response. Okay, so it's a major decision that we await today.
Well, it promises to be, well, the fact that it's being considered in the first place is notable, and I think it's promising to be, a major turning point in, the court precedents over time, because I don't think we've had any, major court precedent, having been, broadcast live, but the fact that this has been considered and the justice has already promised speedy treatment of the demand, I think it's a good thing.
Well,
I'll be looking forward to something really, momentous in this particular one.
So we await to see how the panel considers that, and what exactly will be the response of the APC, because APC is vowing an appropriate response. But let's move on to other stories here. And so you can see splashed on the front page of the Punch pictures of the celebration of the governor of Osun State and some residents of the state, Governor Adeleke and his elder sister, Chief Mrs. Dupe Adeleke Sonny, in sort of an embrace there. And you see people jubilating in other parts of the state. Final victory. Buhari, Tinubu congratulate Adeleke. Supporters jubilate. That's on the front page of the Punch newspaper. And we should stress that it was a unanimous judgment by the 5 justices of the Supreme Court. And so, after winning at the tribunal, the appeal court and the Supreme Court judgments went the way of Ademola Adeleke, and it was jubilation. I saw some pictures of some civil servants, ecstatic yesterday in their offices. A particular woman was rolling on the floor, you know, people were jumping, and you know what it means to them.
Yes, they were just happy.
They were happy
all through the state, especially civil servants, and I think, you know, rightly so, because they have been getting some sort of you know, special treatment from the Adeleke administration since it came in, and I think that it's just some sort of payback, and you know, it's what's expected of them. When you feed people, it's just natural that they pray for you to, you know, to be successful as well. So it keeps coming.
Well, now that the deal has been sealed, now that the position is secured, and it's also important that the governor and his team do not betray the confidence reposed in them. You know, so there's a tendency to want to relax because you have what you wanted now, or perhaps all what you've been doing before is just to entice the people and bring them onto your side. But now that, you know, the coast is clear, it's also very important, we should stress, that the confidence reposed in the governor and his team is not wasted.
Well, I think there's always a payback for everything.
Yeah.
If he relents now, I think
there's another time in 4 years' time, really. Yeah.
When
so we'll mark a report card.
Where the people will review all what you've done, and then they'll just straight back in your face, and it's going to really blow up in the person's face. So I don't think it would be a good move at all by the administration to relent or to take back, you know, some of their promises.
All right, so bottom right corner of the paper, 15 die in Sokoto boat accident, 25 missing. Lagos bishop raped me twice. Female pastor. FG orders private jets removal from Abuja airport. The speaker, that's the above the nameplate. Speaker, 5 aggrieved aspirants team up against Abbas. We talked about the drama that it is not yet Uhuru for those who are sort of the anointed candidate of the APC leadership. So TJ Abbas seems to have some opposition, you know, coming up together. Those who are also running alongside him, all of them APC members are saying they do not buy the instruction of the leadership of the APC that they should settle for a particular candidate. So they're saying that they're going to work against him, and you know, including, we have amongst these 5 Idris Wase, who is the current deputy speaker of the House. We have Adodo Gua, who is the current House leader. We have Hamed Betara. We have, you know, quite a number of them who are also strong politicians in their own right. So we are waiting to see how that pans out. We are waiting to see how their grievances will be managed by TJ Abbas himself and Ben Kalu, and as well as other members of the House and perhaps the APC leadership. So
if the party can succeed in placating them to give Abbas a run at this time.
Yeah. All right, so Otedola fumes over Transcorp deal. Elumelu keeps mum. He spilled the benzene. You read that story yesterday. I mean, Otedola felt that it was slighted. They felt that it was
maybe
that, I mean, Elumelu dealt with him treacherously. That seemed to be what I was saying yesterday. And he went back. He made reference to what happened in the past when he was bankrupt and how he invested in the UBA and all of that. You know, it's what you see in the business world, the murky business. I mean, the business world can be very dirty and very, very dangerous.
And I really would not want to attribute this to ethnicity again.
No, it has nothing. This is just businessmen, you know, scrubbing over deals. Yes. He attempted to buy out Transcorp, but then it was checkmated and he had to surrender all of his shares. I think that was what actually happened. And this one, over $200 billion national assets lost to terrorism, according to the federal government. That's a huge loss.
Very.
$200 billion lost, national assets lost to terrorism. That's from the federal government. Okay, so that's started on the Punch newspaper this morning.
All right, quickly to the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian newspaper says, amid 168% tariff hike in 8 years. Nigerians pay premium for unavailable electricity. Amid 168% tariff hike in 8 years, Nigerians pay premium for unavailable electricity. That's on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper. And really, it has been, even noticed here in Osun State, how the much available electricity in the past is dwindling by the day. And we can see that it's 168% tariff hike in 8 years. I think that's very much. It's too much in 8 years.
Well, it is a lot. 168% hike in tariff, and we've not seen anything better, especially for those who know how good electricity was here in Osogbo before. I think it's a perfect testament to how bad things have gone. Osogbo seems to have now been demystified in terms of electricity. There was a time that Osogbo enjoyed like 20, 22 hours, sometimes 24 hours of electricity every day. People who came in from Lagos that time were surprised at how good it was here. People would not really wear iron clothes for 1 month and keep, now pick up their clothes and iron when they want to. But not anymore. Things have terribly nosedived. I
think it was one of the things that enticed some businesses to
come to Osogbo.
Yes. It was one of those things. But now we can see that it's also dwindling even here in Osun State.
And so if tariff is increasing, I think it should be consistent with improved services also. But the reverse is the case here. And it's quite unfortunate that in spite, this is almost 200% increase, because at this rate, there seems to be a template now that the NERC uses, that tariff get increased maybe on a yearly basis or biannually, the tariffs get increased. So people do not even need to know again. They are not informed before the tariff, increased.
And we can see some of the reasons, even though it's not justified, but it's one of the reasons why people are bypassing, term meters and, going the, unjust way. But we hope that this can be settled, then people can get value for their money.
That's very important. Well, that's that about the tariff hike. But I mean, you just said it. We hope that people can get value really for their money.
And just below that story, non-oil exporters receive 144 billion naira rebates in 14 months. Non-oil exporters receive 144 billion naira rebates in 14 months. That's on the business page 15 of the Guardian newspaper. To get more of that story, please check that page. And besides that story, Beavers to the rescue, Supreme Court affirms Adeleke Osun governor. That is on page 4. They're talking about the affirmation of Governor Ademola Adeleke as Osun State governor. And to the extreme of that, concerns over electricity generation as terrorists eye national infrastructure. I think that was what we saw on the Punch newspaper, where it was said that what has been lost so far to terrorism.
Yes, when the program was saying $200 billion.
Yes, that's into the
we're in the eye of the storm. Actually, so if the terrorists are now eyeing national infrastructure, we've lost some national assets.
Yes, and now so they're eyeing this particular
the electricity generation infrastructure that is not enough. So if the terrorists now decide to focus their attention, then that means there is a lot of trouble on the horizon. We hope that we're able to nip that in the bud.
Yes, and we can see a picture of generator here. It means that might be, the last resort for us if nothing is done to curb that. But below that story, outrage over abduction, forceful conversion of 14-year-old Esther to Islam in Kaduna. That's on page 8 of The Guardian. says, outrage over abduction, forceful conversion of 14-year-old Esther to Islam in Kaduna. And below that, speakership, Rep. Sir John Amid alleged rule forgery in favor of Abbas. And that's on page 3 as well. And that's all the stories we have on the Guardian newspaper.
Well, I mean, so some new insights, if I should say, or some interesting angles emerging in the race for the speakership. So they're beginning to allege some forgery or trying to change the house rules. I'm sure that this is a season, as we say here in Nigeria, it's a season-long film. We've just begun.
Really, really.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go over now to the Daily Trust newspaper. Revenue sharing formula. El-Rufai wants 80% for states. Revert to 1963 Constitution. Soludo advocates devolution of powers. Let's deploy tech to diversify economy. That's Pantami. That's the banner headline of the Daily Trust newspaper.
I think each of the speakers have raised, very important concerns, valid concerns too. Very valid. I mean, so it speaks to the restructuring argument. To the question. So some have advocated that return to 1963 Constitution, that perhaps it's our best working document ever. There are those who've also picked holes, but they said the time when this country developed at a fast pace, the regions were competitive, was during when we operated the 1963 Constitution. But those who pick holes or argue against that Constitution say, well, it was that Constitution also that led us into a civil war. That was the Constitution that we were using before we went to a civil war. But it's evident, wherever you argue, that we need to have some structural adjustments, some structural changes to the Nigerian Federation. It's important. But I do not know if giving the states 80% of revenue is the way to go, because we also need to ask questions, even of the small ones given to them. How have they been managing it? And, there are little or no checks and balances at the state level, because houses of assembly at the state level are an appendage. You heard, I guess yesterday, even talking about the National Assembly, about being a super ministry, of the executive. So now come down to state where governors ride roughshod over these lawmakers, where governors handpick members of the House, determine who becomes a speaker, and the speaker is like a special advisor, senior special assistant to the governor. So it's that bad. So if you give them more money, are we sure it's going to be judiciously used in the interest of the people, or it goes down the drain again? So that's a big question. Okay, so that's said. Let's move on. Below the nameplate, by the top right-hand corner of the paper, Supreme Court affirms Adeleke as governor. Let's come on to all of the papers this morning. Sudan crisis. Airlines sign agreements to airlift Nigerian Hajj pilgrims. I think a resolution has been reached on this case. Initially, the airlines were not comfortable with the idea because of the war in Sudan. Their route to Saudi Arabia passes over Sudan. But because of the crisis in Sudan, the Sudanese airspace has been closed. So they will have to go through a longer route to get to Sudan. And they've already collected money from passengers. So if they are collecting 2.3 million naira, for instance, because they thought, ab initio, that they were going to go through the normal route, go through Sudan, down to Saudi Arabia. But now that Sudanese airspace has been closed, they need to go through a longer route. And so they weren't comfortable with signing the agreement at that time. That was something that would be done. I think that was it. It appears that the solution is being made now. Senate probes NDDC over 1.4 trillion naira illegal spending. That's another story there. And 15 girls die in Sokoto, both mishap. That's sad. Crude theft. FG demands 7 billion naira before vessel release. 7 feared dead after drinking tea at wedding in Kano. Wow.
Oh my goodness. How do you how do you die after drinking tea, but it laced with poison?
Oh, is
What
it the
happened?
tea that had, issues? I don't know if it was intentionally done probably at the party, or the tea, the brand of tea itself, was contaminated.
That's sad. And finally, on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, Tribunal hears Obi's motion today, articles on Tinubu's citizenship tomorrow. And ex-Lagos governor seeks dismissal of APM's petition. Okay, so that's the much we have on the Daily Trust newspaper.
All right, on the Nation newspaper, the headline says, National Assembly, Akpabio, Abbas rally lawmakers for support. And the riders, House Speaker, Deputy Speaker candidates visit President-elect. And Senate President candidate widens support base. North Central Senators protest zones neglect. And that is still on the tussle for different states in the National Assembly.
So like we said, it's going to be a long-drawn battle.
Yes.
They have up to like a month between now. So a lot they say in politics that 24 hours is too long.
Yes.
So let alone 1 month.
Yeah.
So it's even longer. So it's going to be a long-drawn battle.
And just above that story, Osinbajo inaugurates Transco's AFAM 240 megawatt fast power plant, and that is on page 7 of the Nation newspaper. And below that story, Tribunal adjourns Atiku's motion on live telecast. Tribunal adjourns Atiku's motion on live telecast. And beside that, monetary policy alone can't reset economy, says CBN. And it says non-oil sector critical to recovery. That is what the CBN governor has said on that story. And to the bottom strip, PDP governors begin move to reconcile Atiku with Wike, Makinde, others. And that is on page 6. But I don't know if, honestly, there can be a true reconciliation between these parties of the PDP.
It remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. You need a best of mediators. You need people to forget the past, to move on. Somewhat it can be very difficult, especially if chances have been destroyed. That was Atiku's best chance at the presidency, and it was scuttled by a number of factors. The fact that those 5 governors pulled the rug off his feet in their own state, the fact that some of his lieutenants, like Peter Obi, decided to go their own way.
And to the extent that in Rivers, PDP could not hold their rally. Yeah,
it's that bad. So you begin to look at how the reconciliation will be, and like you said, can there ever be true reconciliation? But you don't have permanent enemies in politics. Yeah, you only have permanent interest. So if their interest aligns, who knows? Who says it can work? Who ever thought that Wike and Tinubu will ever work together? But here they are working together. Even here in Osun State, elements of the former governor, Aregbesola, worked with the Adeleke. I remember that when the Lady Saka Adeleke died, at some point, some people were pointing fingers the direction of the former governor, Aregbesola. But here we are. So, it's politics. You didn't ever say never. You don't foreclose any situation, so anything can happen. In this case, we also keep monitoring if there will be genuine reconciliation, like you really said.
Well, above the nameplate, petrol subsidy pushing Nigeria to bankruptcy, Sanusi warns. El-Rufai Buhari declined advice to end payment. That is on page 5. There are some revelations coming out. El-Rufai now saying Buhari declined advice to end payment. Well,
so for 8 years, I was dilly-dallying on when to end subsidy. But it's also, I know it's also a very difficult decision. It's not as easy.
Right.
If you remove subsidy today and it's not with mileage, it can lead to breakdown of one another, chaos. Because the last person that tried it burnt his fingers, cost him a second term. Goodluck Jonathan is still alive. 2012, there was the Occupy Nigeria protest that was triggered by the partial removal of subsidy at that time. Petrol prices increased on January 1. It was, perhaps it was also misapplied because it was on the 1st of January. Many people were trapped in their villages, and then petrol prices went up by how many percentage points, and bus fares increased. Many people are finished spending their money for these festivities, and then so it was a very difficult time. And so the same is here for those who argue that we need to remove subsidy. I mean, I agree, it's a difficult one, but you should also acknowledge the fact that for the leadership, it's not a straightforward decision really for them, because if you remove subsidy, every aspect of our national life is tied to petrol here in Nigeria. So the moment you remove subsidy, transportation fares increases. The woman selling gari increases everything.
Everything.
So it makes can make life unbearable for the average Nigerian, and it can lead to protest, it can lead to riots, it can lead to breakdown of law and order. So I know it's not an easy one, and it's not an easy one, and it can cost you your political life. You know, it can be politically costly. It's if you check our history, at every time where there's been an increase, except during the Buhari administration, at every time where there's been an increase in the price of petrol from the 80s, there's been a spontaneous reaction in form of protest. So anyone trying, I mean, just looking back a time, history, you know, you'll see that it's not an easy decision. It's not as easy as everyone is painting it here, that Buhari declined. And you know, Buhari is also, likes to put up this front of pro-masses. It may not be, but then it's not easy just removing, because if you remove it, there's been different explanations and postulations as to what becomes of the price, you know. So we're buying at maybe 200 naira per litre now. Some experts have warned that the prices could go as high as 500 naira, 600 naira. How do you live with that? How do you live with that with 30,000?
It's going to be across board.
Across board. You
Food,
know,
shelter,
everything goes up again.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, till the last story there, Buhari, Tinubu congratulates Adeleke, and Supreme Court affirms victory. That's on page 28 of the Nation newspaper.
Well, so well, congratulations to Governor Ademola Adeleke and to the people of Osun State there. And the congratulations are in order also from the president, and indeed even the president-elect, asking him to unify all and unite the country. But that's that. I'm afraid that'll be the much about on the papers. We take this short break now. When we return, we'll bring you our guest and then focus of the day. Of course, it's about Governor Ademola Adeleke. The coast is clear now for him to settle down and govern this state. We'll be back.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever is pounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast, detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
Thank you very much for staying with us. You're still on to Morning Spring, and it's coming to you from Western Spring Television, where we give it to you. We say it as it is. Well, it's time for us to focus on our discourse for the day, and indeed, it's about the victory of Governor Ademola Adeleke at the Supreme Court yesterday, where the 5 justices led by Justice Agim gave him victory, affirmed his election, and threw away the appeal by former Governor Adegboyega Oyetola. But let's take a listen, to this report by our colleague Toby Sanusi, who did a report on the judgment yesterday. We'll return after that.
The legal tussle behind the July 16th governorship polls in Osun State did not start until August 2022, when the election tribunal commenced sitting in Osogbo, the Osun State capital. The election results that gave rise to the opposition, All Progressives Congress APC, raising grouse, saw Ademola Adeleke polling 403,371 votes, having won 17 out of the 30 local government areas in Osun State, while his counterpart, Boyega Oyetola, won in 13 local government areas, totaling 375,027 votes. Dissatisfied with the result, Mr. Oyetola, who seeks re-election, heads to court with claims that the election that brought in Mr. Adeleke was marred by overvoting in 744 polling units, claiming that Mr. Adeleke's actual poll was 290,666 as opposed to the result announced by the electoral umpire. The petitioners, Mr. Oyetola and the APC, whose lead counsel are Lateef Fagbemi and Akin Olujemi, further pressed the suit by claiming that Mr. Adeleke forged the certificate he presented to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. In a minority judgment, the second member of the tribunal, Justice Obuli, who dismissed the petitioner's case, held that there was no justification that there was overvoting, but the minority judgment could not pull the stronghold of the majority judgment. The aftermath of the majority judgment of the tribunal in January, delivered by Justice Tetsi Kume, saw Mr. Adeleke being sacked as the governor of Osun State, as Mr. Oyetola was declared winner of the election. The legal battle went further after the first, second, and third defendant, INEC, Mr. Adeleke, and the People's Democratic Party, PDP, challenged the judgments at the appellate court in February, after which the three-man panel in its judgment by Justice Mohammed Shuaibu reinstated Mr. Adeleke as the governor of Osun State, dismissing the tribunal judgment. Consequently, the court awarded a sum of 500,000 naira cost against the APC and its candidate, Mr. Oyetola. The appeal court's judgment, however, sparked the latest appeal filed by Mr. Oyetola before the highest court to decide the fate of the two contenders. Mr. Oyetola and the APC, in the appeal filed by their lead counsel, Lateef Fagbemi, prayed the Supreme Court to determine the position of the appellate court to declare that Mr. Adeleke was not qualified to contest in the election due to alleged certificate forgery and that he did not accumulate majority votes. Meanwhile, INEC, who is also a defendant in its cross-appeal, challenged the decision of the appellate court over the failure to void the tribunal judgment and failure to reject some exhibits tendered by the APC and Mr. Oyetola on the grounds that some of the documents were altered. Consequently, Mr. Adeleke and the PDP, who prayed the court to uphold appellate court's judgment, asked for dismissal of appeal by the petitioners for lacking merit and competence. Following the appeals, a 5-member panel of the court, while delivering judgment today, affirmed the election of Mr. Adeleke as Osun State Governor. In the judgment read by Justice Emmanuel Agim, the court held that the evidence submitted by the appellants, which did not include beavers machines of the 744 polling units in question, could not be relied upon as the primary source of records for the accredited voters in the polling unit, which means the allegation of overvoting was nullified. In the same ruling, the Supreme Court held that Mr. Adeleke was well qualified to contest the governorship election in Osun State, as allegations of certificate forgery was not proved by the appellant. The Apex Court also ruled that the expert analysis presented by the APC and Mr. Oyetola was not independent on the grounds that the expert was a member of the APC and an associate of Mr. Oyetola. In the aftermath of today's proceedings, the Supreme Court's judgment has laid to rest all the contending issues around the Osun 2022 election. Toby Sanusi, Western Spring Television News.
Well, so that's the reaction yesterday at the country home of the Adelekes. That's the private residence of the governor. People were celebrating, you know, they were ecstatic. And you heard Toby Sanusi in that report. There are Lord Justices led by Justice Emmanuel Agim, who read the judgment affirming the election of Governor Ademola Adeleke. And you know, we'll be getting more details from the legal practitioner who help us understand. Really, it appears that beavers was what played the game. Yes. That was really the game changer there yesterday. I mean, our colleagues also went to the street, spoke to people to feel the pulse, to know what their reactions are. But just before we bring the guests, perhaps to take a listen to that other report to get to know what actually happened yesterday. It's really at the governor's residence. His private residence at the country home in Ede. Yinka Ali was there. Let's take a listen to her.
Jubilation, chants of victory and fanfare. It was in the residence of Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke as the Supreme Court upheld his election as the Governor of Osun State. The Apex Court, in the judgment today, dismissed the appeal filed by former Governor Adegboyega Oyetola, who was the candidate of the All Progressives Congress in the July 16, 2022 election. Oyetola has approached the Apex Court to appeal against the judgment of the appeal court delivered by a panel led by Justice Mohammed Lawal Shaibu. The Apex Court held that regulations by the Independent National Electoral Commission does not provide for the transportation of accredited voters to the database except snap pictures of result for Form EC8A to the IREF. Thereby, it cannot be relied upon. Reacting to his victory, Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke thanked the judiciary for standing by the truth and delivering a fair judgment. The governor similarly appreciated the people of Osun for standing by him since he assumed office, assuring them of good governance and dividend of democracy.
Now that is over now, that I've been affirmed as the authentic governor of Osun State, so it's now time for us to focus all the way to bring out
the First Ladies, Chief Mrs. Titilola Adeleke and Irelu Ngozi Adeleke, appreciated the judiciary, insisting that they proved to be patriotic Nigerians. They both assured the residents of Osun that the governor would not disappoint them.
I want to thank the judiciary for the judgment of today. They've done well, they've done so good. They proved that they are a patriotic Nigerian. And I want to thank the people of Osun. I want to thank them for their support.
Today is my joyous day, it's my happiest day. And you see, this victory, we dedicate it to God Almighty who made it happen. Secondly, we dedicate it to Osun people for their support, their immense support. And I dedicate to the whole Nigeria, the whole world that supported us. Because I know everywhere in the world today, everybody is watching to see how the victory will be. And we thank God. We give God Almighty all the glory, all the honor, all the adoration, dominion, everything in the highest place belongs to our God.
The secretary to the state government, Teslim Igbalaye, described the judgment as free and fair, giving his word to the residents of Osun that the Adeleke's administration will have the interest of people at heart.
But the victory is for the people of Osun, not for the government.
That Senator Ademola Adeleke won the July 16, 2022 gubernatorial election against APC's Adegboyega Oyetola. Olayinka Ali, Western Spring Television News.
Well, interesting reactions. The jubilation, ecstasy, people reveling in this new victory.
It was quite palpable. I mean, you could almost, touch it. But yes, like they said, it sort of confirmed a lot of things for the people of Osun. And indeed, we could see all over that, yes, the people of Osun, came out en masse to celebrate the victory of the governor.
Well, and so we wish the people of Osun State the very best. We try and we're still hoping to connect to our guests. I hope we can now. Okay, so let's take a listen to yet another report. I mean, so let's feel the pulse on the street. What are people saying? How they reacted to that victory? Let's go to the street of Osogbo now.
Because of the victory of our new elected governor, Dr. Engineer Ademola Adeleke, I'm so happy, very, very happy indeed for the victory, because we have got a new governor, also now in a new form. We have seen the light, also have seen the life report is rejoicing.
Never guessing no me go look ose. Never guessing no me go look ose. Ebi no me do de loni. Ipe Demola gómìnà wa òun ló já olúborí nílé ẹjọ́ lónìí. Inú wa dùn gan gidigidi. Inú wa jẹ́gun rẹ̀ sì dùn. Inú wa dùn. Agbo wa láti orí nǹkan tó dáa sí lágbára Ọlọ́run. Àmín.
Well, But that's the mood, that's the feeling all over yesterday. I mean, even until this morning, there are pictures on social media of civil servants, you know, running up and down, jumping, falling down, rolling on the ground because they are happy. Really, it was that great and so heartwarming for the people of the state. So the course is now clear, like I said earlier on, for the governor to begin to even do more, serve the people even more conscientiously. But I do hope that we have our guest on the line, if we can join him now, to join us on the program. And so a number of issues, according to the court yesterday, based on INEC regulations and guidelines, election results can only be collated in Osun State. Former Deputy Speaker of the House, and also one time former Commissioner for Works, former Commissioner for Health in Osun State, a man of many caps and many feathers. Honorable Niyi Wolade joining us live on the line, I believe, from Abuja this morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. Honorable Wolade.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
Thank you. And congratulations to you and your legal team, and indeed the entire people of Osun State.
Yes, thank you. We thank Almighty God.
Thank you. Also, I mean, you were in court yesterday. I mean, so explain to us how it all went down. I remember I interviewed you on radio after the Court of Appeal judgment, and you told me then that you are confident of their lordesses at the Supreme Court affirming and going the way of the...
But in judgment, right of onset, it was based on issues raised in the pleadings of the appellants. And honestly, justice was served, and it's great, not only for the good people of Osun, but for Nigeria, that some groundswell on our jurisprudence has been well laid out, and you know, this will go a long way to help our electioneering process in Nigeria.
Well, interesting. So we had a case where the Supreme Court settled once and for all. I mean, you've reiterated that it's been settled before now. The case of the certificate forgery against the governor, so the educational status of the governor, there's no question about that. And I guess the crux of the matter was whether the Beavers report or not. Do you mind explaining to us how that went down? I mean, on the Beavers and how these impact other cases. You know, the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal is ongoing. Osun has always been one that sets sort of, you know, precedent for other electoral cases. I think we've done that since 2010. You mind telling us how the Lord Justices settled the case of the Beavers and the synchronization, or whether there is no synchronization?
Thank you very much. Osun has always been the case setter when it comes to issues of faith. And he took this argument, was able to lay out right from the onset. Actually, it was the issue of overvoting, which was calculated on issues 3, 4, 5, and 9, which was resolved in favor of the respondents. From now on, we know that if you want to get any matter on overvoting, you have to bring it to the fore. The voters register. You have to bring to the fore the Beavers and, of course, the ECA tape. These three are vital. You know, the appellants who, so, you know, the testimony of two witnesses and the Tornan report of the BVR was what the entire of the position of the petitioner of the appellants. That was what they based their something on, and this was well calculated and in issues that he referred to as issues 2, right from 3, if I may correct that, 3, 5, 3, 4, 5, and 9, which were all resolved in favor of the respondents. The ground one That is the issue 2 was on the issue of qualification, which the issue of qualification, which is spelled out evidently that educational status had already been settled. The only thing it is surgery and judgment in rem. There was a judgment in rem, and honestly, the justices of the Supreme Court were dissatisfied with the tribunal when there was a judgment of the Court of Appeal and the tribunal did not follow that. It's unbelievable. It's supposed to be the binding force, and that the tribunal was definitely wrong not to follow the Court of Appeal. On that, on the principle of stare decisis. We have our hierarchical courts. Once the superior courts, once the higher courts have made a decision on something and spelled it out, it's not for the lower court of the tribunal to go otherwise. So they couldn't fathom why the tribunal should have done that. And then, of course, the issue 1. And Honorable Justice Jauro, Adamu Jauro, and Honorable Justice Tijani Abubakar all agreed and dismissed the appeal.
Well, interesting. So, this judgment has, I believe, implications on the different petitions across the country regarding election conducted in February. Because, going through what their Lord Justice said, the court, I'm trying to get a part where I'd like you to do perhaps further explanation for us. The court held that it is glaring that the appellant did not provide in evidence any beavers, but sought to prove overvoting by means of a report of examination of INEC's database or back-end server. And the court also held that information from the BVR relied on by the petitioners was not a direct record of the number of accredited voters, but third-hand evidence derived from the database, which is second-hand evidence.
All sides also brought in the beavers. The beavers is crucial. The evidence from the beavers is very important. But it made it clear that the beavers had its own challenges. The fact that which you are well spelled out there, the issue of when you say you don't have service or you don't have the human error that it's not been punched in, and this was an issue that the Honorable Justice Okoro, when he was supporting his learned brother, stated eminently that the beavers has come to stay. It's very important, it's crucial, and you did also the voters register. This is the issue of the voters register, because we made the big weather of this. You cannot say that you forget the voters register. So, all in all, the beavers, which has come to stay, has its own challenges, which was well made out when Honorable Justice argued within his judgment.
So, I mean, please go ahead, sir.
So, all in all, you cannot, and they were emphatic about this, you cannot rely on a third-hand report. And we said this emphatically in our appeal that the best evidence rules should have been used. You don't rely on a report and state that is your case, and you want to stay on that. They made big weather of this report. And when you made the big weather of that report without even bringing in the beavers machine, we didn't tender. It wasn't tendered. We brought the beavers machine in. And that the testimony of two witnesses. One, the first one was not even an expert. And you want to build your case on that. And in fact, Justice argued that the burden of proof, once the burden of proof, you have not discharged it. So you are now relying on a report from our side to prove your case. How do you do that? So I think that the position of the law has been well clarified, especially with the introduction of the beavers. You know, without the beavers, you cannot report. And you cannot report. And you know, the beaver is only a report of the date of the data that has been transmitted. This BVR is a third-hand evidence. It's a third-hand a report which you cannot now rely as the mainstay of your case. So the appellant, you know, means the whole thing entirely, and this has been well spelled out by the justices of the Supreme Court. And I think they did a great job yesterday, especially in the area of Obamoti. You know, the issue of Obamoti is always crucial. And the issue of fair hearing, of course, you know, that is classical. If there's no fair hearing, you know, of course, the whole thing crumbles. And that was the issue one, as a matter of fact. The preliminary objection, which was not considered, but it was a violation to fair hearing. And the PO not being together makes the whole thing a nullity. So in all areas, honestly, the appeal failed woefully. And it was well laid out by the 5 justices of the Supreme Court, the apex court.
Well, so, you know, inadvertently, I mean, so if that judgment had gone the other way yesterday, the future of beavers would have been in jeopardy. Is that correct, sir? Yes.
You know what was interesting is this. The day before yesterday, the 8th, on Monday, the 8th of May, when Lateef Fagbemi SAN was adumbrating on his appeal, he went on because he requested for 20 minutes. But Justice Okoro, who presided, said, we have read all, you know, we read everything. You don't need 20 minutes. Okay, let's hear you for 10 minutes. And Lateef Fagbemi went on and did not say anything on beavers. So, on the 9th minute, Honorable Justice Agim, who eventually read the lead judgment, then put the question across to Lateef Fagbemi that you've been saying things on voting, but you've not even said anything on beavers. Are you saying the beaver is not important in this? Lateef Fagbemi was, you know, not coordinated when he had that. And he started going on about pleadings, that it wasn't pleaded, or something. And well, he didn't really answer the question. So then I knew that, I think we'll laugh the following day, the next day, the day of the judgment, because he had shown that the beavers, you see, there are certain important components when you want to go on appeal from the judgment of yesterday. And those 3 items, very crucial in proving your case. The issue of the voters register, the issue of, that's to know the registration there, the beavers, which is to help you ascertain those who have been accredited, and of course the ECA. How do you prove overvoting without these 3 together? I don't know. And in fact, they said something which is crucial, that there was the need for you to prove your case with the beavers of each area which you are ascertaining. You know, and this is interesting as we move forward on our electioneering processes. The fact that you do not rely on further reports. Summary evidence is very crucial. And this is where, you know, those 3 issues come in that I mentioned. And the fact that if you're stating if you want your case, you don't rely on the evidence of the other side to prove your case. The whole issues, if you look at the totality of the appeal over voting, the issue of qualification was secondary, but over voting is stressed tremendously on over voting. And that was not true. That nothing had been put on over voting. As a matter of fact, to let you know how to the extent the justices of the Supreme Court yesterday when it this matter, they were able to ascertain, they were able to illustrate that the issue of overvoting, which the appellants were relying upon, that how do you now petition the voters register? You even petition the beavers. Now you are now relying on the report. If you recall, we made an inspection. We asked, we made an order. We requested for an order on the report of the beavers itself, which was referred to as the RWC. And at the end of the report showed only 6 units. They went to the nitty-gritty of this, that the RWC is the direct record in the machine. While what was emphasized yesterday was that BVR, the BVR is the report emanating, which is still referred to as the Southern report. And so it was expected that the best evidence should have been used after we were stating that don't rely on that report, which was the organ of the face of the appellants, that report. And obviously from now you don't really have the report until you go to win your case. So it has brought to the fore the importance of the component which for you to prove your case you have to win. So it was, I think, a judgment that has really, really helped a long way, and that will go a long way in stating what the position of the law is, especially with regards to overvoting. Of course, we already know that the issue of qualification, was well settled, and there was no evidence adduced. In fact, Justice Agin went to the extent that if you're going to say anything about forgery, you go to the institution and bring the maker of such. You go to the university, you bring the registrar who will now come and say, yes, this has been forged. It has been well laid to rest. And he was surprised that this was even still being brought up in the tribunal. And of course, the other one that was fundamental is the issue of the preliminary objection, which was not considered, which is a violation to fair hearing. Fair hearing is fundamental. So any matter you take to court, if there is no fair hearing, you don't see the nullity. So it was not surprising that the appeal was dismissed, outrightly, and it was unanimous.
Okay, so the legislature also talked about the fact that the case of the petitioners, that the presiding officers were bound to instantly or on the spot transmit the number of accredited voters in the beavers to the back-end server of INEC has no support.
Yeah.
Does that have anything to do with, is it similar to the issue of transmitting results to the IREV also?
Yeah, of course. Of course. That's the process. If you have you transmit. That's part of the process. And of course, before I forget, the justice of the Supreme Court also laid out that you cannot the INEC guidelines cannot be cast aside. You know, INEC made that guideline and even showed how the results will be transmitted. And the issue at hand really is that when you transmit, that's the importance of BVAS. So if you're going to prove your case and you don't want to rely on the BVAS itself, they expected that the BVAS should have voted off all the local governments you are challenging. If you say that there's overvoting in place and you've not even brought in any of the BVAS machine for that specific area you're challenging, then it goes to no issue. And that is, you know, the whole essence of this, which I think we must praise Justice of the Supreme Court who delivered judgment yesterday. The 5 of them, you know, the fact that there are some fundamentals. If you have a BVAS to be employed, and you have not even relied on that, you are now relying only on a report, and you want to prove your case based on that report and the testimony of just 2 witnesses. You know, how do you petition the BVAS machine and just cast it aside and think that it's not as important? Even the register and the voters register and for the thing of the past, you know, and you cannot say the voters register. I'm happy that they were able to clarify this issue. You know, they are important components in proving your case. If you want to prove your case. So the BVAS is very crucial. The BVAS is very important for you to prove your case. And the aspect also of the best evidence you know. And I still recall what Honorable Justice Gani Abubakar, who read the 5th Justice of the Supreme Court in our panel, when he said he was happy with his learned brother, the lucid and illuminating judgment which he will adopt. You know, that was the provision of all the justices of the Supreme Court. You know, the BVAS, of course, is very, very important. It's crucial. There's no doubt.
Well, so, you know, as it stands, you know, why I asked that question about the transmission that the court held that it doesn't have to be instant or on the spot was because I've heard some of the complaints after the presidential election was that results are not transmitted, you know, to the IREV. And here the court seems to have held that it's possible that you do not, so you cannot rely on the back-end server report because it's possible that you did not press submit. You need to rely actually on the BVAS machine itself. And that, I think that was the core of the case here in Osun. And that was actually what got you the victory. And that was what, you know, why the appeal of the appellants, you know, failed. Does it have any implication on the petition of the PDP and perhaps the Labour Party at the national level at the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal?
No, I think it's important for us to distinguish what the Osun case and what is happening in the federal matter, in the sense that some of something had been transmitted. Their own crucial point was the report, which they really went to to collect. You know, in the case of what is happening now in the presidential assembly, we understand that some areas were not even considered at all. Are you saying that well, I don't want to create the eventual decision, but if you have BVAS, if you have to send to the back end server in some areas, nothing. Are you saying that, you know, the beavers did not work at all, or there was a decision not to transmit? You know, it's a bit different because there was transmission in our own case, but what had been transmitted was not complete. But from what I understand in the presidential, that some periods there was no transmission. I mean, there was not. They were relying. You had two sets of. I don't know whether the old thing had really been transmitted up to now. In the case of the presidential, so there's a bit of distinction there, please. I think it's important for us to know that.
Well, and so, you know, going forward, what should the people of Osun State expect from the Ademola Adeleke administration? Now that the coast is clear, the verdict has been given. That's the final lap of the victory race. And so, you know, there are no encumbrances anymore. What should the people expect from him?
Well, glory be to the Almighty God that at long last that the coast has now been cleared. And if you recall, the Court of Appeal was unanimous. The Supreme Court was unanimous. So it's not a matter of, you know, maybe there's a doubt anywhere with regards to the position of the law. So you have 8 justices of the appellate courts, you know, saying the same thing and doing the same thing. So I'm sure that Governor Ademola Adeleke will now know that the governor will now be thinking of his legacy, because right from the beginning, and I think he has shown to a large extent in the first 100 days of this what he was able to accomplish. And you could have seen that the people of Osun, because if you have elections taking place right now, that's how you know whether they agree with you or not. The fact that out of 9 House of Reps, the PDP got the 9, 3 out of 3 senators, and 25 out of 36 in the House of Assembly. I even understand that maybe that 26th one will be challenged, but that's another issue entirely. But suffice to say that it is now governance stage. I hope and pray that he'll be able to sustain what he has started, the way he has started it. Now is for him to move forward, to move Osun forward. Osun is blessed abundantly in human and natural resources. And I know that the effect, the leadership which he has shown in the first 5-6 months of his being a governor of this morning.
Also, without talking about, I mean, while celebrating, that celebration was tempered with the unfortunate news of the demise of the former chairman of the party in Osun. There was also the current zonal chairman of the party in the Southwest, Honorable Olasoji Clement Adagunwodo. You know, that must have weighed, you know, the celebrations down in a way.